America Street, USA, a series of programs produced by radio station KFJC-FM at Foothill College, Los Altos, California.
And I think that that is really a hard question because
I don't at all. I differ on that.
And that's marvelous, just fine.
Some people feel
I guess my answer is going to be more the way I wish it were than the way maybe I think it is.
Well, I think the situation...
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think they're worried about it.
In the city of Sunnyvale, California, there is a street named America Street. Families of many different backgrounds live on this street, and in the immediate neighborhood, it's a melting pot of America in miniature. What are the feelings, the attitudes, the texture of life on America Street? What do these Americans think about America as it is today? For if we are to approach the reality of the American experiment in democracy, we must know, understand, and respond to the opinions of America Street. In this series of programs, we ask you to imagine that you are overhearing a discussion among the residents of America Street, as occasionally compared and contrasted with informed opinion from other sources. Today's topic, civil rights and civil disturbances in America. We chose America Street because in many ways it is a typical American neighborhood, but in one sense it is too typical. There are no black American families living on America Street. A few black Americans live in the surrounding neighborhoods, but many, if not most, black residents of the county live in such ghetto areas as East Palo Alto. It might surprise some of our listeners to learn that there are ghettos in the suburbs as well as the big cities. And yet at the core of America's racial problems is the fact that for too long we have not properly taken into account the opinions of black Americans. The black experience is foreign to most white Americans. Therefore, as part of today's program, we have chosen excerpts from statements by two of the most articulate spokesmen for black Americans. Novelist, essayist, and playwright James Baldwin, known for his understanding and compassionate view of the black experience in America, as well as the vigor of his statements, and Stokely Carmichael, an intellectual leader for black militants and activists. First, some of the opinions of America Street.
And back in my day, we never heard of such thing as racial segregation and so forth. I mean, we were raised right beside a colored family. We were all, kids play together and everything else, and never thought nothing about it. But I work with fellas now that are real nice fellas. But when you pin them down and talk to them, I mean, they're real bitter, boy. They're real bitter, a lot of them. And even though they're not, from what I understand, talking to a lot of them, that they're not satisfied with having equal rights. Now, I mean, they think they should have a lot more. This is the attitude I find a lot of them have. And these fellas that I talk to are nice fellas, I mean, but in their families, evidently, I mean, they've probably had stuff happen in the past, everything that's made them feel this way. They must have.
Is it getting better for the black man, or is it getting worse, as some people feel?
I guess my answer is going to be more the way I wish it were than the way maybe I think it is. I think quite a bit of progress, maybe more progress than many of us realize, has been made in re-educating people. Some of this has been, I think a great deal has been achieved by the advertising media, by including models, people on ads and so forth from obviously different racial groups. I think this has been quite effective, a great deal more effective than many people realize. In this sense, I think we're achieving a degree of acceptance, but I think there's still going to be a lot of trouble ahead, partially because of the slowness of our moving as we should, and also because of the Some of the militant groups, both black and white and mixed, I'm not putting the finger on any one group.
Since one report said we're moving toward two societies, one black and one white.
Is that necessarily worse if that's what they want?
Pardon me?
Is that necessarily worse if that's what they want?
Well, I don't know.
I don't know either. I'm asking you.
Polarization, I think, is
I-
the worst thing that could happen. No question about it.
Well, I think that I can see the point of the black in wanting to educate their own children and their own people in their history and background. And while I don't think it's a desirable thing, but if they do, I almost feel that it's what they should do.
No, absolutely not.
Well, they're second-class citizens. This is the way.
Well, how do you get over
Lever
being a
puts it.
second-class citizen?
Well, I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Still,
You get
do you
over-
feel the situation is getting better for the black man?
I do. Yes. I don't think there's any question but that it's getting better.
Well, I think the situation among the blacks is improving economically, materially, but as far as their mental attitude, as far as their feeling that they're being integrated or anything like that, I don't think it's improving a bit.
Stokely Carmichael speaking to an audience of students.
So we don't have to waste time asking, are you really mean you're for violence? Yes. Just like the United States is using violence in Vietnam, just like they use violence to get everything they acquire, just so we are for violence to end our oppression, period. You know, so they're used to violence, but they just don't want to see that black man with that gun shooting their policemen or disrupting their system. And I do not think that we should waste time discussing that because that's really irrelevant, especially since the question is moot. There is going to be violence anyway, so why waste time discussing it? Violence is, period. It is clear that in terms of conventional politics, the United States of America is concerned with political equality, but is not concerned with economic equality. That is to say, opportunity for economic equality. The United States would go all out to grant opportunity for political equality, but it would not do that for economic equality. And I think that contradiction is beginning to catch up with America. It is more important for someone to have a full stomach than to have the vote. The vote with an empty stomach really doesn't mean anything. And I think that this becomes crystal clear, especially after the Chicago Convention, where people begin to see clearly that the vote really doesn't mean anything. Because if we accept the polls for whatever they are, the real choices of the people within those conventions were never realized. And so people then had to vote on what other people had picked for them. So that I think the new issue today, and the issue in which more people are going to move, is going to be the issue of economic equality.
A lot of these movements have become more militant. Do you think this is a sign that peaceful demonstrations didn't get anywhere?
Well, I think they served their purpose for a while, and then, but I don't think it went fast enough for them, and I can't blame them. But the Watts riot in Los Angeles proved that if they got up and rioted, they accomplished something. That's why I say violence accomplishes something lots of times, and I can't blame them. And I think that that's why they're doing this. That's why they are being militant.
Well, of course, I think that
And I think we do have to hand out to them.
Yes, we do, definitely. But the violence in the Hunters Point area, I don't think has achieved the results that people thought it would. For example, the number of jobs that they have come up with for colored people has been rather very disappointing. And of course, the general economy at the moment isn't swinging like it was 6 months ago. I mean, the government is trying to take the pressure off, and it makes it a little difficult, but at the same time, I think that more people could hire some black people if they wanted to.
You said that earlier that you think the Negro is in a better position than he was now.
I think things was, a few years ago, was going along better, but since all this racial trouble that they have around different places, I think that has made it harder on the colored people to advance. I mean, I think there's a few that has made it hard on their own race. I mean, I think there's a few that's made it harder.
There's the radicals.
Radicals has made it hard. Now, you take, I would say the average person, they don't like it either. The colored person, they don't like it, I think. Actually, I think they're against it, the most of them.
I think most people are afraid of them getting too powerful as a race or a group.
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think they're worried about that. I think it's just going to be a lot of work between each side to get everything settled and to get it back down. The colored peoples has got to help a lot, and the white people's got to work a lot towards it. I mean, both sides has got to work together. They can't, you can't fight and be friends. That's the cinch.
I think there's a disagreement among the black people as far as the proper approach. I think that Dr. King had the proper approach myself, but I think that many of the people haven't got the patience. They feel they've waited long enough. And again, this is one of these things you would almost have to be there yourself to really know.
Mm-hmm. I think that Dr. King was a great man, and he was truly trying to teach the white people the need of integration, and he was trying to do it peaceably, and it wasn't working. And he was sort of caught in the middle. Dr. King was forced to do things that he didn't really want to do. He didn't want to have this confrontation the way it occurred. And when it did occur, why, the white community went against him. But by the same token, he had to do it in order to keep the support of the blacks, because the blacks were so quickly inclined to call another black an Uncle Tom if he was fraternizing or too friendly or showed himself too amenable to the white man's domain, you know.
Mm-hmm.
James Baldwin speaking to an audience of young people.
In the present climate of our country, there seems to be a very great bewilderment on the part of a great many people as to what precisely it is that creates discontent in the cities and in the schools. This discontent has been with us since the first slave got here. It has been with us since the first slave master either beat or stroked his slave. It has been with us since the first Christian gave me my name and destroyed my history. It has been with us all during the time of the spirituals. It is what jazz comes out of and what it is all about. It is what people mean when they talk about soul now. What they're talking about is a great gap between lifestyles occurring on the same continent within the same nation, and this gap between the experience of a black man and the experience of a white one is now begun as it did many years ago. It now is the single most menacing fact of the national life. It is not an accident that now, in the middle of near the last half of the 20th century, in this country, people are still demanding why black people are upset. Black people have been upset, as I said, for many, many, many generations. But now something has happened very important in American life, and it's this, that no one can any longer contain the discontent. The structure which held it together is no longer able to control it.
Do you feel the situation's getting any better for the black man, or is it staying where it is or getting worse?
I think it's getting better. I don't think they're going to be two societies. I don't agree with that. I think it could be going ahead farther and faster than it is, and I think that, if we had more money to spend here in the United States instead of on the moon and in Vietnam, and I think these people must be given more to get them going.
Do you think the current racial situation is getting any better?
Yes.
Well, it's fired up a bit more, but our situation, I think, is better. Certainly the blacks have
Sure, we
more opportunity
don't
now
have
than
black
they did.
regiments in the Army anymore. I mean, which 20 years ago there was.
Is this change too slow? Is it fast enough? Number of people.
Oh, I think it's fast. That's why it's so heated right now. If we're any faster, well, you can't go any faster. You have to wait until we all die and our future generations come up. We're less prejudiced than our parents, and they're less prejudiced than their parents. Heidi will be less prejudiced than we are. But this is time. This is going to take time. So I don't think we can speed it up. I have certain prejudice. I'm sorry I do. I would move into a racially integrated neighborhood, but I would object to having a black family move in across the street. If I own this house, I don't. If I own this house, because I feel the value of the house would drop down.
You do?
And, yeah, I do. But I would move into a neighborhood where I would have a black person as a next door neighbor. So I don't know how you figure that out.
Yeah.
But I guess I
don't think that's true in all cases.
Don't
no.
you?
If it was a, if it was the same, you know.
McCovey tried to buy a house right down the street.
Yeah, but that was 8 or 9 years ago. Now.
Yeah.
Things have
Yeah.
changed in that time too.
Yeah,
You
but
think they'd let him buy a house now?
they didn't
Yeah.
want him.
Yeah, I don't think it would be. It just wouldn't. Who could protest now?
Mm.
These people that live here got too much at stake. I mean, if the man's a doctor and he started protesting, getting Powell United
All right, if
States,
the property
Dr.
value would not go
So-and-so,
down, then I would
you know,
enjoy having
was
this
publicly protesting someone coming in here. Or if you're a teacher at Stanford and you live here, or whatever else.
What determines it that how the value goes down? Do you think it's?
Well, you'd have
You think
fewer
people would start
people that
selling?
would be.
You think people would say,
Oh.
"Oh, I'm going to move out"?
No,
You know?
some would. I don't think very many would. Maybe 2%.
Do you think most people in this area, this Sharon Heights area, are prejudiced? Do you feel that
Oh, they have
To an extent.
To a degree.
Do you think the structure it's they'd rather not have minorities move in?
No,
That's
well,
like
no,
nothing.
minorities are Japanese. There are lots of Japanese. Not lots, but there are 4 or 5 families. About 200 acres. But probably representative
No,
of the
if
total
say if the
population.
house wouldn't go down more. Oh, I sound awful now. But say if the house wouldn't go down more than $1,000, then I would think that I would enjoy having a black couple move in across the street. I might benefit. I mean, just in getting to know. I don't know very many black people, really. Just in being in closer contact with them. It would be worth $1,000 maybe.
There was a report saying that.
If we treated our back neighbor as we ourselves, it all boils back down to it, wanted to be treated ourselves, I believe that we could get along as brothers and sisters throughout the world, and I do believe this. It's not the old cliche. I'm not trying to get across the point like some of my best friends are black. That's not the point I'm getting at now. It happens that I do have some, but that's not the way not just my friends, it's everybody. If we treated everyone with equal respect, and as though we wanted ourselves and gave them a fair chance at everything that we have a fair chance at, which we don't now, I think that this problem, it would still be a problem. It couldn't help you because there's going to be bigots anywhere you go. There's going to be segregationists everywhere you go. I don't care where you go, especially in the South, I guess. But if you just put yourself in that person's place for 1 second of their life, I think you'd be so disgusted with yourself as a person. Because I've done it too. I mean, I'm not one. If you asked me if my daughter wanted to marry if my daughter was going to marry a black person, I'd say, God, please no. And I couldn't help it. That's my honest opinion. No, because I don't think it would be good for their kids because of the society we live in. But if everybody in this society had the viewpoint that let's treat everybody as a unit. Let's all be brothers. We're people. We're human beings. Let's start acting that way and treating each other that way. I honestly feel that attitude would go from a lot of minds, and it would go from mine for one. If I didn't think it would affect my daughter adversely as far as how she was looked on by other people, which is all important in this world right now, then I would say fine, let her marry whoever she wants to. I really would. I think that if the whites were more willing to sit down and discuss and try to get the problems solved today, today or tomorrow and look for that kind of a goal. Don't look for the goal like, well, in 10 years we'll have everything integrated. Let's try to do it a little quicker. I think that things would settle down a little bit if the black people realized to a certain degree also that we're not trying to make them wait any longer. That's not the point. But that things just can't be done overnight that quickly. We can try, and we'll set our goal as short a time as we can. But that you cannot, through violence and sniping and looting and robbing and burning down your own place to live or somebody else's place to live, you don't solve a thing. You really don't.
Stokely Carmichael.
But perhaps the major failure of all liberal movements is that their primary task is to stop confrontation. Their primary task, I remind you, is not the readjustment of injustices. Now, following from that comes what I think is also the second reason why the liberal movement in the United States makes a mistake, and that is the liberal movement in the United States is afraid to alienate. They want to tell everybody that they can be their friends, but whatever, the liberal never ever seems to grasp the idea that he must point out who caused the problem. He cannot just assume it's a happy, merry world and just somehow something went wrong, but we can all readjust it and everybody will live happily ever after. You know, the remarks usually are, well, it's true that black and white didn't get along, but why can't we all just sit down now and sing "We Shall Overcome" and enjoy life? And they just dismiss the problem. I think that one of the reasons for that is because the liberals have to seek to maintain the status quo. Third point. They have to seek to maintain the status quo because the liberals benefit from the status quo. Liberals group in the United States are economically secure. But since the liberal is already economically secure, he does not want to threaten his economic security. So what he wants to do is to reform the system while maintaining his economic security. And that is the basic failure of the liberal movement in the United States.
I think in different parts of the country, I know in large cities like Chicago and Detroit and New York, where the black population continues to grow, that they're being sorely pinched in a very important way, for example, in housing. They're continuing to attract black people to emigrate from the South into the North, into these large urban areas, which are unprepared to take care of them. And it's becoming worse and worse and worse for them until eventually, unless our federal and city and state governments in these urban areas do something immediately, and not of a temporary nature, but of an important, long-lasting nature to alleviate that situation, we may have a blow-up in our cities that will just chain react across the country. The black problem is not necessarily a problem of the agricultural communities. Different in that respect. It's a big city northern problem. There is a backlash right now in California in the black situation, which will result in more militancy, and that is the minorities in California, such as Californians with Mexican antecedents, reacting to the favoritism being shown to the blacks, to their disadvantage. They're not receiving any aid or assistance to the extent that the blacks are, and yet they outnumber the blacks.
Is this because they don't demonstrate or organize as much?
It may very well be. Maybe this is what proves your point. Maybe this is what proves your point.
Yeah.
They certainly aren't as well organized.
James Baldwin.
It is very difficult for a white man or a white person to accept my version of American history, which is that it is at bottom, and perhaps it is true of all histories, but this is the one that affects me, a criminal history. And this fact has to be faced before we can do anything about our present situation. When I say a criminal history, I mean the uses to which we have put flesh and blood in order to make money. This is the generation, hopefully, which will have to look into this matter. But the price, I think, for this, and here I have to speak to you again, as very young people, the price for beginning to do this is to begin to realize that you have been bequeathed a legend concerning black people, concerning Sambo, which has only existed in white men's minds. It has never existed in fact. When black people riot or rise up or say they want to get a gun, they want to arm themselves, Senator Easton says there must be communists involved in it, and everybody else says the Negroes are violent. Violence becomes something to be feared only if it turns out that black people may become violent. Now this says something about the white people's psyche. It doesn't say anything about me. If I have lived among you for 400 years, somehow raising my children, somehow loving my woman, somehow living my life and singing my songs and getting to my grave, and you still don't know what I am talking about, if you still can ask me at this late date, what are you unhappy about? What does the Negro want? What makes you think you are in any way equipped to deal with a complex globe?
Now, like in the South, I always figure this way, that the biggest trouble with your racial problem was the old people themselves, I think. Again, if they leave the young people alone, leave them mingle with each other, I think they could handle it and they could work out the situation without any trouble. But, I mean, they get a lot of influence from their parents, from the older people. And now the younger people weren't born with this bitterness. I mean, it's got to be instilled in them through somebody. And I think that's been a lot of the problem. I think the older people have kept the thing going. It isn't the young people.
Think the young people are going to change it? Or try?
I think if they leave the young people alone, I think they will eventually, yes.
I think you've just got to take people just as they come. I mean, if they're black or they're white, you either like them or dislike them. You know, people have tastes. They've got to temper their tastes honestly rather than through color. That's really not forming an honest opinion. If you don't like somebody because of his color, why, I guess that's your row to hoe. But you know, there's not much you can be done about it. In other words, you can't legislate popularity.
Well, I think it is somewhat better in that we've kind of all had to sit up and pay attention, and
we've all had to think about it anyway. And
think about it.
What is our attitude?
I think the young people are going to have to do most of this for us, you know. And I think that people have got to stop passing on their prejudices to their children to go on and on. This is what happened for the 100 and so many years after the Civil War, you know. Just went on, and people said, well, can't expect to have everything overnight. This was more than 100 years after the Civil War. Well, can't expect everything right away. 14 years after the Supreme Court's decision that we desegregate, and yeah, I think it's better. Although some of the black militants do kind of scare me, you know.
We don't have the answers yet to the crucial problem of civil rights in America. But if the opinions of the residents of America Street are any indication, we do know that the racial dilemma has deeply affected all Americans, more than ever before. And as best they can, they are responding and attempting to solve that dilemma. This has been America Street, USA, one of a series of programs investigating what Americans think about America as it is today. Produced under a grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting by Jeff Osborne at radio station KFJC-FM, Foothill College, Los Altos, California. Interviews were conducted by Robert Wheeler. Narration and technical production by Bob Bergstresser. The executive producer was Professor Stuart Rowe.
This is the National Educational Radio Network.